this video, I'm going to go through some of my favorite features about Eclipse. You can check out the previous video on how to set up Eclipse as an IDE if you click on the video link. So let's go through some of the most useful panels that I like to reveal inside the PyDev interface. One thing that I cannot live without is the show view outline. The outline shows all the functions and classes inside of whatever file you have open. It filters that. So here you can also search through your functions for keywords, which is very fast. You can list them by name alphabetically. You can go through and filter certain things about it. You can hide all the imports and get a little bit cleaner view here. You can hide the commenting and match, tokens matching the double underscores for inits and such. So, and then when you click on the functions, it just skips to that in your code. Another really useful panel is tasks. So if I bring out the tasks here, you can see that there's a lot of stuff populated. Basically, that's because it pulls to-dos from every library that you have included in your project. So if you click here and say show, and then instead of show all, show to-dos, now it's only going to show things that are relevant to the file that you have open. So if I put in a hashtag to-do colon, and then some comment, do something. When I save this file now, that's going to pop up over here. So this is kind of handy to have open because when you jump over, you can immediately see that there's something you have marked down and you can double click it to jump to it. Along the same lines, I think bookmarks are very handy. Whenever you write code that you want to refer back to yourself, you can right click and just say add bookmark. You can give the bookmark a name. I don't know, for loop, anything, any description. So if you go to window, show view other, and go under the general here, there's a bookmark. So then that bookmark will show up for your entire code depot. So you can quickly get to the bookmarks that you have created in your code. Let's talk about the overview ruler and the vertical ruler in combination with mark occurrences. Mark occurrences is when you highlight a variable inside of Eclipse and you can see the variable everywhere it's used. It lights up over here in the overview ruler. You can go into preferences here and occurrences will be highlighted and you can turn on the vertical ruler as well. So now when I highlight a variable, you can see out here that we have an arrow pointing to it. So if we slide to the code, all the variables are marked for us. And there's a way to even jump around here. You can go to the next. Basically, you can filter all these things. So there's a shortcut associated with jumping to the next occurrence, and that's control and comma. So now I can skip around. So that goes backwards, actually. Go back by hitting control comma and go forward by hitting control period, or the right arrow and the left arrow on the Windows keyboard. Here's something short and sweet. When you're going to delete lines, instead of double clicking or whatever, just put the cursor on the line. Control D will remove the line in its entirety. When you want to rename variables, you can always do Control F to go find and replace. But something I find is even slicker is if you Control 2, it brings up this menu of a bunch of things you can do. You can search in all open documents for that variable, so now you get the search results in the open documents only. But the one that I use all the time is Control 2 and then hit the R key. So rename occurrences file. You get this little action box, and as you're typing this, it renames the occurrence, and when you're done, you hit enter. A lot of times we are reusing code. So I'm going to create another function here that's disable character. It's really the same as this function, although the only difference is there's going to be a 0 here. So something that speeds things up a lot in Eclipse is like you can select code and Control Alt arrow down will duplicate any selection, and then Alt arrow down will shift the code and arrow up will shift the code up. So you do this kind of all the time. So now we can just rename this to disable and change the 1 to a 0. So you don't actually even have to select only when you have a block you select, but if you have the cursor on the line, I can Alt and Shift that line around or duplicate it. Another thing that I constantly use is commenting. You can select a block of code and just hit Control and / to comment that set of code out. This is really handy when you're just experimenting with things and you quickly just want to comment things in and out. Eclipse also has a very powerful search feature. You can double click to select any word or anything you want to search for and hit Control-H. And this will bring up the search box. You can choose PyDev search to search the modules in the PyDev index. So this will be the Python code that you have in your library pretty much. And here you can set the scope. You can set the entire workspace. You can search within a module path or within certain projects in your workspace. So if I search the entire workspace, you see how fast it is too. Like it instantly finds wherever this function is being called, as well as the function itself. So the true power of an IDE is how aware it is of your code library. So one thing that's very powerful is that I can just control click. So here's an imported module, this Calm Maya timeline is right here. So it's calling a function here. I can just control and click on it and it will open that file and go to that function, which is really cool. But what I almost appreciate more is if I just hover over this, I can now get a hyperlink that also lets me open that. But what's even cooler is that I can just hover over it, click in this window, and actually see all of the code of that specific function in a pop-up window. And I can copy and paste the code out of here, which is really, really handy. Next, let's talk about code completion. Code completion is something that just happens that you get to reap the benefit of, but it's one of the true powers of an IDE. So if I just type I here and start for import, it automatically fills in the word, and all I have to do is hit enter. And then I'm going to start typing a path to my code. So Maya, and then when I hit the dot here, I see every single module I have in my Maya package, which is really, really handy. So I can quickly kind of scroll and find what I want in there or just continue typing. So if you lose focus right here, all you have to do to get it back, to get code completion back at any point, is Control spacebar. And now I can sort of finish up importing. So now if I create a function here, test, so as soon as I complete that, it automatically fills in the colon, and if I have some parameters that I want to fill in, it puts the cursor right there. But in this case, I'm just going to leave it blank. So if I start calling this module HIK, so as soon as I hit dot here, it shows everything that I have available to me. And the other cool thing is when I select it, I also get to see the code of the actual function. So if I can double click here to sort of fill that in. And again, I can see the code that I'm referring to at all times. This is very, very powerful and becomes really, really fast code when it auto-completes like this. There's a shortcut to run the active script. So here I've created a little demo script where I have a function that just gets Maya files out of a directory path that I pass it, and I can include the subdirectories or not. So to test something without having to call this from another file, you can use the syntax right here. If name equals main, it runs the function. So now when I run this, you can right click on a file and say run as Python run. and it will run that. So it prints out all the Maya files that was in that directory. If I just put this command out here, it will get run every time I import it. So that's not very functional. So basically, if I have the else case here, this will get run when something gets imported. Just to prove that, I'll open this. And so Control F11 will actually run the selected resource. So now you can see that it printed, got imported here because I just imported that demo from this file. So something that's really handy is actually to change the Control F11 functionality. So right now it just runs the selected resource. What I end up doing most of the time is to run the last ran resource, because often I'm working with an MVC pattern. So I am launching my application through a main script, and I may work on the model in a different, so I may work on a different part of the tool basically. So I don't want to keep going back to the main to run the tool. So you can go to Window, Preferences, Launching, and right here there's a little thing that said always launch the previously launched application. I usually turn this on. And so now if I run demo, Control F11, and I jump over to this demo import, it will still run this demo. And this is usually the behavior that I want. For the last Eclipse tip, I'm going to show you debugging and some handy hotkeys for stepping through the debugger. So if you want to debug something, you put a break line in, and you do that by double clicking the line. So you double click it again to remove. So now we can just select this little icon right here to run this in debug mode. And the first time there's a pop-up asking if you want to switch to the debug perspective, I would say yes to that and to remember your decision, because the debug perspective is kind of nice. So here you have all variables that you can keep track of as you're stepping through your debugger. We can see that the file path that was passed was this directory right here. And so here's the line where the code basically paused at. So here are some hotkeys to remember. So step into is F5, step over F6, and step return. So to jump into the code to this function right here, you just hit F5, and that opens this up. And this is basically referencing a function inside this right here, a little further down. So just hit F5 again, I will jump to that, and then F6 to go to the next line. And anytime you just hover over any variable, it pops up with the result that was passed in. So this is really, really nice. So I can see all files here is empty. We can sort of step through this for loop, and here it's populating the first. So now we can see that this list is basically being populated, and we can see that list here too. We can go to our variable panel and look at all the files that has been, or the files that has been populating this this list. So then we can just kind of step return to go out of that and back up in the stack, and then same thing here. And now it's just going to print through, and if we step return, we're going to get out to here again. So this is a really, really nice way to figure out what's going on with your scripts. And when you're done, you can just terminate it and go back to your regular coding perspective. That wraps up this video. If you find this useful, like and subscribe to the channel. And also in the comments, put anything you would like to learn about TechArt.